Every crime lab in the world, every forensic unit on every cop show you've ever watched, owes a debt to three brothers who blew up a train in the mountains of southern Oregon, murdered four men, stole absolutely nothing, and then vanished. It was October 11th, 1923, and for the next 4 years, nobody on Earth could find them. Nobody, that is, until one scientist picked up a dirty pair of overalls and read them like a book. What he pulled from those pockets didn't just solve the case, it changed how crimes are solved forever. This is the story of the Siskiyou Massacre, the last great train robbery in American history. By the end, you'll know how three young lumberjacks turned a simple heist into a bloodbath that yielded $0. You'll know the single clue they left behind, that they never even realized was there. And you'll know what happened when the largest manhunt in American history, 2.5 million wanted posters, printed in 6 languages, sent to every continent, finally closed in on 3 men who thought they'd gotten away with it. The DeAutremont brothers grew up poor. Their father Paul ran a barber shop in Albany, Oregon, and the family never had much. Twins Roy and Ray were born in Iowa in 1900. Their younger brother Hugh came along 4 years later. By their early 20s, all three were working the logging camps of the Pacific Northwest, swinging axes and hauling timber for wages that barely kept them fed. Ray, the restless one, had fallen in with the industrial workers of the world. He'd been jailed during the Red Scare, and prison left him angrier than before. He was convinced the system was rigged, that the men in power cheated and stole from working people. And somewhere along the way, that conviction curdled into a plan. They'd rob a train, not just any train. Southern Pacific's train number 13, the Oregon-California Express, rumbled south through the Siskiyou Mountains carrying mail, cargo, and, the brothers believed, a fortune. Some sources say they expected several $1,000s. Others say they'd convinced themselves the train was hauling $500,000 in gold. The number doesn't matter. What matters is that they believed there was money inside that mail car, and they were willing to kill for it. Now here's the detail you need to hold on to. In the weeks before the robbery, the brothers stockpiled supplies at a cabin above Tunnel 13 in the Siskiyou Mountains. Among those supplies was a pair of green payday bib overalls. In one pocket, folded small enough to forget, was a receipt for a registered letter. Remember that receipt? In 10 minutes, it decides everything. Tunnel 13 sat at the highest point on the Southern Pacific Main Line between Portland and Southern California, bored through more than half a mile of solid bedrock back in 1887. The steep grade up from Ashland required an extra locomotive just to push trains to the summit. And at the top, right at the tunnel's east portal, the train had to stop for a routine brake test before the long, steep descent into California. That pause was the brothers' window. On the morning of October 11th, 1923, under a clear blue autumn sky, they took their positions. Roy and Hugh hid in the brush near the east portal, armed with sawed-off shotguns and Colt .45 automatics. Ray waited at the west end with the dynamite. Their faces were smeared with grease paint to look like railroad workers. Think about what's about to happen. 3 men with logging camp experience and no criminal record are about to hijack a moving train inside a mountain. They've never robbed anything before. They once tried to rob a bank in Washington state and got as far as crouching in the bushes outside, only to watch 2 other men walk in and rob it first. That's who these men were. Amateurs with guns and a box of dynamite. At about noon, train number 13 pulled into the east portal. The helper engine uncoupled and switched onto a spur track. Before engineer Sidney Bates and fireman Marvin Seng could start the brake test, Roy and Hugh climbed aboard the locomotive. They shoved their shotguns at Bates and ordered him to pull the train through the tunnel. The engine cleared the west portal and stopped. The mail car sat just inside the tunnel's mouth, still dark, still sealed. Inside that car, postal clerk Elvin Dougherty heard the commotion. He knew what was happening, and he did the only thing he could. He locked the door. The brothers screamed at him to open up. Dougherty refused. So Ray handed Roy the dynamite. And this is where the plan died. Roy was supposed to wire a few sticks to the door, just enough to blow the lock. Instead, he used the entire box. The explosion tore the mail car apart. It killed Elvin Doherty instantly. It set the car on fire. It damaged the coupling between the cars and locked the train's air brakes, making it impossible to pull the engine forward or separate the wreckage. Smoke poured through the tunnel, and when the brothers stumbled through the black haze to find the fortune they'd come for, there was nothing. No gold, no cash, no payroll. The mail car was carrying letters, just letters, and now those letters were burning. Everything collapsed in minutes. Brakeman Charles Orrin Johnson heard the blast from further back on the train. Thinking the boiler had exploded, he walked through the tunnel to investigate. He stepped out of the west portal, and the brothers shot him dead. Then the panic set in. More railroad workers from the Siskiyou station would arrive any moment. Witnesses had to go. Roy shot fireman Marvin Seng in the head with a .45. Ray looked at Hugh in the locomotive cab, standing over engineer Bates.
"Bump him off," he said. Hugh shot Sidney Bates in the back of the head. A coroner later determined the bullets passed through both men's raised hands before hitting their temples. They died begging.
4 men dead, $0 stolen. The DeAutremont brothers fled into the forest. They had prepared for this part at least. A hideout stocked with food and supplies waited 2 miles into the dense timber. They hid there for nearly 2 weeks while armed posses, U.S. Army soldiers, and even search aircraft, one of the first uses of planes in a criminal pursuit, scoured the mountains. They found nothing. The brothers slipped out, split up, and disappeared. And this is where the story pivots. For months, the investigation went nowhere. Authorities found the cabin. They found the overalls. They found the weapons. But they couldn't connect any of it to a name. The Southern Pacific Railroad investigators assumed the oil stain on those green overalls meant they were looking for a mechanic. Some local auto worker, probably. They chased that lead into a dead end. Then they called Edward Oscar Heinrich. Heinrich was a 42-year-old forensic scientist who lectured at the University of California, Berkeley, and ran a crime lab out of his own home. He'd been building a reputation case by case, applying chemistry, physics, and microscopy to evidence that other investigators glanced at and tossed aside. He took the train from Berkeley to the cabin in Oregon. He photographed everything. He bagged the overalls and brought them back to his lab. What happened next is the reason you've heard of forensic science. Heinrich laid those overalls on his workbench and dismantled them thread by thread. The stain other investigators had called motor oil. Under his microscope, it was pitch, tree pitch, Douglas fir pitch, specifically, mixed with fresh pine needles ground into the fabric. This wasn't a mechanic. This was a lumberjack. A Pacific Northwest lumberjack. The wear pattern told him more. The denim was abraded almost exclusively on the right side. The position a left-handed man would adopt while leaning against a tree to swing an axe. The suspect was left-handed. Wood chips had collected in the right pocket, confirming it. Strands of light brown hair caught in the bib gave him complexion and coloring. From the dimensions of the garment, he estimated height and weight. He built a profile of a man no one had ever seen. Left-handed, about 25, 5'8", 165 pounds, light brown hair, fair skin, fastidious personal habits. And then he found the receipt. Deep in a pocket, folded and forgotten, was a slip of paper. A receipt for a registered letter, a $50 money order sent on September 14, 1923, from Roy DeAutremont to his brother Hugh in Lakewood, New Mexico. One receipt, one name. The entire case broke open. Heinrich went further. He restored the filed-off serial number on a .45 caliber pistol found at the scene and traced it to Ray DeAutremont. He matched handwriting on supply receipts from the cabin to Hugh. He analyzed hair samples. He compared fingerprints. He examined bullets and cartridge casings. In one investigation, he deployed nearly every technique that modern forensic labs use today: trace evidence, ballistics, document analysis, serial number restoration, hair and fiber comparison. It was 1923, and he did it from a home laboratory in Berkeley. The media gave him a name for it. They called him the Wizard of Berkeley, the Edison of crime detection, America's Sherlock Holmes. But knowing who committed the crime and catching them were two different problems. The DeAutremont brothers were ghosts. The US Post Office printed more than 2.5 million wanted posters in English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, German, and Dutch, and distributed them across the United States, Mexico, Central America, and Europe. The reward climbed to nearly $16,000. The total cost of the manhunt eventually exceeded $500,000, more than $6 million in today's money. It was the largest, most expensive manhunt in American history to that point. 4 years passed. Then, in February 1927, a soldier stationed in the Philippines glanced at a wanted poster and recognized the face of the man bunking next to him. Hugh DeAutremont had joined the army under the name James Price. He was arrested immediately. His capture put Roy and Ray's photographs back in the newspapers, and someone in Steubenville, Ohio, recognized the twins. They'd been living there as Elmer and Clarence Goodwin. Ray had even married a 17-year-old local girl as part of his disguise. The FBI arrested them both in June 1927. All three brothers signed confessions to avoid the death penalty. They were convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Their endings tell you something about the price of that October afternoon. Hugh was paroled in 1959 and died of cancer 2 months later. Roy developed schizophrenia in prison. He was given a lobotomy, standard at the time, barbaric by any other measure, and spent his final years in a nursing home after being paroled in 1983. He died 3 months later. Ray, paroled in 1961, spent the rest of his life working as a part-time janitor at the University of Oregon. He died in 1984. While in prison, he painted a landscape of the Siskiyou Mountains, the mountains where it all went wrong. He titled it Solitude, Silence, and Mountains. 4 victims never got those decades. Sidney Bates, Marvin Seng, Charles Orrin Johnson, Elvin Doherty. They died with their hands up, doing their jobs, because 3 young men with no plan and too much dynamite decided the world owed them something. But something else survived that day. Edward Heinrich's work on the Tunnel 13 case proved that physical evidence, properly read, could speak louder than any witness. His methods became the foundation for forensic investigation in the United States. The U.S. Postal Inspection Service adopted his techniques for federal cases. The FBI's approach to interstate manhunts was shaped by this investigation. Every crime lab in the country carries a piece of what Heinrich built from a pair of overalls and a forgotten receipt. So the next time you watch a detective on screen swab a surface, run a fiber, or match a bullet casing, know this: that discipline was born in a tunnel in the Siskiyou Mountains on a day when 3 brothers killed 4 men and stole nothing at all. Would you have opened that mail car door? If this story stays with you, you're not alone. The Smithsonian's National Postal Museum still maintains an exhibit honoring the 4 victims and the investigation that changed everything. If stories like this deserve to be remembered, and the people who lived them deserve to be named, consider subscribing, because this channel exists to make sure they are. And if you want to see what happened when forensic science met the railroads again, decades later, and an ocean away, that story is already waiting for you.